Okay, here we go. Thursday, January 16th. Wow, it is getting crazy, boy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. I really love this stuff. Boy, is this entertaining. Just before we get into the reason why we're here, here's a little Gavin Newsom for you. I do want to touch upon this idea. So we got some people coming in. How you doing? Jonathan's here. Peace, brother. Good to see you. And 3555. Jackie joined. Hi, Jackie. Nice to see you. So there goes Jonathan with the likes. I love it when Jonathan shows up. We start pumping up those likes and those hearts. Says here on my screen, Jonathan, more likes can attract viewers. Keep it up. So thanks, Jonathan. And here's V is coming into the room. Just before we get into the workbook for Course in Miracles today and the text, I want to start expanding the conversation a little bit on this channel and in this live. And I just want to begin to develop the idea of our spirituality not being separate from what's going on in the world. So that, I think, is more of a concept of being a spiritual warrior, perhaps, but taking spirituality, taking my spirituality, taking our spirituality into the world, because I don't think any of these problems are going to be solved, of course, without a spiritual component or spiritual element. So I just want to start opening up that conversation, lean into it a little bit, because once you start talking about current events, which, by the way, from a media perspective or from a social platform perspective, is kind of where all the action is, right? People talking about what's going on in the world. But I do want to frame it and make sure that we're coming from a spiritual perspective when we look at this stuff, when we talk about it, interpret it, and, decide how to approach it. So that's the TikTok ban yesterday. So I'm going to talk a little bit about politics, but again, I think it's important to understand that spiritually we can't be afraid to move through this territory, right? Because you start talking about politics, and of course there's some very that energy there is very rough and chaotic, and a lot of spiritual people do a bypass on that. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to think about it. Uh, my mother's like that. If I start talking to her about what I saw, what I heard, what's going on politically, even in the state of Illinois, where we live, where we're from. I spent the last 24 years out in California, 16 years before that in Chicago. But, so there's the fires in California and all the response and discourse going on about those fires, all kinds of, a lot of interesting things are happening. Just think about the fire element from a spiritual perspective, right? And think about having a discourse about the fires in Los Angeles as you talk about the fire element and what the fire element means. And fire is, of course, a cleansing element. There's cleansing going on in Los Angeles right now, in Hollywood, on the West Coast there. It's cleansing. But the fire is also represents the spirit, right? Another level of cleansing. So I would consider it also a spiritual cleansing that is happening out there, or what is being represented, and it's focused out there. And of course, as we consume that, as we consume the media narratives about those type of things, uh, I like to frame it from a spiritual, from a metaphysical perspective. So you've got fire out in Los Angeles. You also have water. So you've got the water element going on out there, which is about emotions. Lack of water, not having enough water available, not having enough compassion, not having enough love available. Perhaps it's just one place to start the discussion, start to have a discourse about that. And of course, then, from a spiritual perspective, we have to find the energy to begin to have those discussions peacefully and seek, instead of debating, instead of arguing, fighting, going to war over what we believe, uh, let's start having an open discussion to reach a higher level of understanding. Same thing with the TikTok ban. I just thought I was so entertained yesterday. Couple things going on with the TikTok ban, of course, because I'm involved with this platform. I've really bought into this particular incident, this particular scenario as it unfolds. It's very intriguing to me because it looked like there for a minute, of course, that the Congress was going to do this special motion and extend the time available. And then the rightful senator of, where's he from? I'm thinking Tennessee now, but I don't know if that's correct. Tom Cotton. But if you get a chance and you think you can handle it emotionally and vibrationally, go find that speech he gave on the Senate floor yesterday when he said no. And of course, only one person has to say no as part of this special motion. And so he drew the short straw, but man, I don't think he's reading the room correctly. I really don't think Washington, D.C. is reading the room correctly. Hi, Martini Alfredo. I don't think Washington is reading the room correctly with this stuff, and I think I left a comment somewhere today. Tom Cotton, this is going to be his Wile E. Coyote moment. You know what I'm talking about. So those types of things are just in the air. I'm going to begin expanding the content, what we're talking about on this channel. So we'll just start out maybe the first 10 minutes of this broadcast, the show in the morning, with those types of ideas. But nonetheless, we will continue talking about A Course in Miracles. Hi, Pamela. Nice to see you. And today is Thursday, January 16th. So we are on lesson 16 in the workbook. I also saw Daryl Anka here earlier. I don't know if that's really Daryl Anka or if that is some kind of other account. But if it's really Daryl, good to see you, buddy. Maybe we could get you to check in here sooner or later. Lesson 16 says, I have no neutral thoughts. And this is another good one today. The idea for today is a beginning. The idea for today, let's say fur. The idea, I hear myself saying fur. The idea for today is a beginning step in dispelling the belief that your thoughts have no effect. So we're now starting to cultivate the idea that our thoughts are powerful. that our thoughts create effects. It says everything you see is the result of your thoughts. Everything you see is the result of your thoughts. There is no exception to this fact. Philip, how you doing? Charlie, Bessie, good to see you. Elliot, thank you. Thoughts are not big or little, powerful or weak. They are merely true or false. Thoughts are not big or little, powerful or weak corresponds with the first sentence from the text, which is there is no order of difficulty in miracles. It is just as easy to stop a TikTok ban as it is to answer the phone. There, it's just a matter of conviction, intention, belief. Thoughts are not big or little, powerful or weak. They're merely true or false. Those that are true create their own likeness. Those that are false make theirs. There is no more self-contradictory concept than that of quote-unquote idle thoughts. What gives rise to the perception of a whole world can hardly be called idle. Every thought you have contributes to truth or to illusion. Either it extends the truth or it multiplies illusions. You can indeed multiply nothing, but you will not extend it by doing so. That's an interesting idea right there. Might want to hang out with that idea for a minute. You can extend reality, but all you can do is multiply illusions, but you won't be able to extend them. You're not going anywhere with your illusions. Besides, you're recognizing that thoughts are never idle. Salvation requires that you also recognize that every thought you have brings either peace or war, either love or fear. A neutral result is impossible because a neutral thought is impossible. There is such a temptation to dismiss fear thoughts as unimportant, trivial, and not worth bothering about, that it is essential you recognize them all as equally destructive, but equally untrue. We will practice this idea in many forms before you really understand it. So there's a paradox there, right? You can die in the matrix, but you don't really die in this matrix. Thank God, that's the mercy of the Creator there, I would say. You can die in this matrix, but you kind of have to come back and get through all the levels. You have to master the game. And so illusions or miscreations or misthoughts, dysfunctional thinking is destructive, but unreal. Yet, in this simulation and on this holodeck, you're certainly going to experience it as real. So, right? This is what I agreed to. This is what we agreed to. So it says to practice this lesson for the day. Close your eyes. Watch the thoughts that come through. Then with each thought, you say, this thought about blank is not a neutral thought. This thought about TikTok is not a neutral thought. This thought about Tom Cotton is not a neutral thought. This thought about the fires in California is not a neutral thought. So I'm either creating illusions with those thoughts. I'm contributing to illusions with those thoughts, or I am creating truth. I'm having truthful thoughts about those ideas. And I think yesterday or a couple days ago, the idea is that, for instance, natural disasters or diseases or misfortune of any kind is not real because it was not created in the mind of God. And so the practice here is to begin to embody a vibration of truth so that the weapons formed against me, cannot touch me. So God, the creator, is my shield and buckler. It's my teacher describes it as, my master teacher describes it as kind of a, your aura is a bubble. And so there, you can create on the screen of consciousness, on the screen of your world. We can create a world where we're protected. There's security. These types of things don't touch us. So you can certainly think of that as, if you want to go to the Bible and Christ being crucified, right? And yet in the Bible, in the story, he rises from the dead. Later, in the Course in Miracles, he'll say, this was a demonstration that the body is not real. So I can lay down my life, I can pick up my life at the highest level, right? So the idea there is that the body cannot be attacked. I cannot be attacked by the world. If I defend myself, I'm attacked, is one of the ideas that we're going to work with later in the workbook, later in the year. I'm giving it away. So it says, as usual, use today's idea whenever you are aware of a particular thought that arouses uneasiness. So we're monitoring ourselves for uneasiness, right? This thought about blank is not a neutral thought because I have no neutral thoughts. So if you happen to turn on Fox News or you happen to turn on MSNBC, take your pick, and it sort of disturbs your field, disturbs your vibration. Use it to practice. My own practice is not to avoid that. I kind of like to jump in to the pool, okay? I like to jump out onto the dance floor and get it going. So there's MSNBC, there's CNN, there's Fox News in the bar, at the airport, right? I start to hear the the low vibration discourse, right? And I start to, So this thought about CNN, this thought about Fox News, this thought about Sean Hannity is not a neutral thought because I have no neutral thoughts. And remember, it's not about Sean Hannity. It's not about Rachel Maddow, is it? Because it's all coming from here. So I'm jacking up my own vibration, right? Right? It's my own vibration that I'm being affected by. So if I can begin to transform my thoughts, what my perceptions, what I think I see outside of myself, I can begin to transform my vibration, which is the definition of healing. So we'll go to the text now, still in chapter 2. Chapter 2, section 8. This is interesting because, again, section 8 is called the meaning of the last judgment. So the concept of last judgment. The apocalypse, Revelations, the last chapter, the last book of the Bible, and sort of the fearful connotations that go along with that, right? The meaning of the last judgment. And right here, in the Course in Miracles, Chapter 2, Section 8, we're going to try to reverse the meaning of the Last Judgment. And what is discussed here is that the Last Judgment is a true judgment. It's a judgment by the Holy Spirit of perfection, peace, joy, and love. That's the true judgment. So listen to this. One of the ways in which you can correct the magic miracle confusion is to remember that you did not create yourself. You are apt to forget this when you become egocentric, and this puts you in a position where a belief in magic is virtually inevitable. The ego believes in magic, the Holy Spirit believes in miracles. That's the distinction that's being made here. Your will to create was given you by your Creator, who was expressing the same will in her creation. Since creative ability rests in the mind, everything you create is necessarily a matter of will. It also follows that whatever you alone make is real in your own sight, though not in the mind of God. It also follows that whatever you alone make, whatever I make alone, whatever I make from a sense of separation from God, whatever I think create, whatever I think make, from an ego perspective, from a sense of separation, is true for me, but it is not true in the mind of God. This basic distinction leads directly into the real meaning of the Last Judgment. Okay, so there's the key right there. If I realize I did not create myself, that I am a created being, and that the creative being, the source of my creation, is all good, all God. It is love. It is perfection. It is peace. Therefore, the last judgment, the final judgment, is the judgment of God, because God created me. And so the last judgment of God is perfect, whole, and complete. The last judgment of God is peace, love, joy, fulfillment. Okay. It says here, however, the last judgment is one of the most threatening ideas in your thinking. This is because you do not understand it. Judgment is not an attribute of God. It was brought into being only after the separation, when it became one of the many learning devices to be built into the overall plan. So what it's starting to introduce here is that there never was judgment. There never was good and evil until, metaphorically, the apple was eaten from, the apple was consumed from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Oh boy, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. We'll keep it brief today, though. You'll have to stick around to hear more about that, because that makes me think of who wrote Ishmael. Can't think of his name. Who wrote that series of books that started with Ishmael? And so it makes me think of him. It makes me think of, oh my goodness, I can't think of anyone's name. Okay, that's why I shouldn't have tried to follow it up. The bald-headed dude out in Denver who wrote thick books. Very intellectual, spiritual guy. Anyway, if anybody can think of either of those people, put it in the comments. But in any case, it's not important at this moment. Judgment is not an attribute of God. Okay, it's the last judgment. So let's see. Just as the separation occurred over millions of years, the last judgment will extend over a similarly long period, and perhaps an even longer one. Its length can, however, be greatly shortened by miracles, the device for shortening but not abolishing time. If a sufficient Ken Wilber, that was one of the names, Ken Wilber, check out Ken Wilber. If a sufficient number of truly miracle-minded, if a sufficient number become truly miracle-minded, this shortening process can be virtually immeasurable. So the idea is that miracles compress time. Once I sort of accept a revelation, once I gain a certain understanding, I don't have to go through the experiences. Boop, and the Holy Spirit or the Christ consciousness removes those experiences from me. I don't have to pass through those learning situations, and time is shortened. Whoa! Oh, I love it. That is incredible. So it's kind of time travel to me. It says the last judgment is generally thought of as a procedure undertaken by God. Actually, it will be undertaken by my brothers with my help. It is a final healing rather than a meting out of punishment, however much you may think that punishment is deserved. Punishment is a concept totally opposed to right-mindedness, and the aim of the last judgment is to restore right-mindedness to you. Excuse me. The last judgment might be called a process of right evaluation. Jonathan, right evaluation. Ha ha ha. Right evaluation. W-R-I-G-H-T or right evaluation. R-I-G-H-T. Anyway. Got to get those puns in. Got to get those puns in. How come I still haven't thought of who wrote Ishmael? Can you see the ADHD checking in here? Anyway, so we're working on separating the true from the false. The term last judgment says goes over a period of time. The last judgment is not like this, like boom, last judgment. Now it's going to take time. The term last judgment is frightening, not only because it has been projected onto God, but also because of the association of last with death. This is an outstanding example of upside down perception. If the meaning of the last judgment is objectively examined, it is quite apparent that it is really a doorway to life. No one who lives in fear is really alive. Your own last judgment cannot be directed toward yourself because you are not your own creation. You can, however, apply it meaningfully, and at any time to everything you have made and retain in your memory only what is creative and good. This is what your right-mindedness cannot but dictate. The purpose of time is solely to give you time to achieve this judgment. So the reason for time is so that I can achieve right-mindedness. And until I achieve right-mindedness, which is a shared condition with everyone and everything, time will march on. It is your own perfect judgment of your own perfect creations. And remember, our creations are our thoughts. So it's right thinking. When everything you retain, when everything I think of is lovable, there is no reason for fear to remain with me. This is your part in the atonement. Wow. Okay, so this is, in esoteric literature, can be identified as the great work. Sort of Western esotericism will talk about the great work. And the great work is after the Creator has split itself up and multiplied itself into everyone and everything, and it's going to rise up from within that creation, and that is the great work. It only took an instant. It's already done, and we now are simply reliving it. We're simply witnessing it passing through time, witnessing the creation that has already occurred in the mind of God. Now, if that isn't something that should be thought about a little bit more than what's going on in Washington, D.C., I don't know what is. So I prefer to think about things like that. If you have enjoyed this live, thank you, Jonathan. I know you have. I know you do. Always good to see you. And if you have enjoyed this live, go and follow this account and look at some of the other stuff that's being put up there for now. I do think somehow, some way, this platform will remain. I really want to. The other funny thing is, are these guys really going to let it end up in Trump's hands? It's so funny. It's so entertaining to me that they're all bought and paid for in that wonderful city on the East Coast. They're all bought and paid for by special interests, corporate interests, and so they have to dance to the tune they have to sing the song of the piper, dance to the tune of the piper. He who pays the piper calls the tune. And so Tom Cotton has to get up and say what he said, and yet, as my friend Moonman T said today, as I was watching him, check out Moonman T. That's a great account too. I saw a little post from him in which he said, hey, they messed up, which I agree with. Of course they messed up. It's what they have to do right now. They can't do anything else. They're sort of the instruments. They're kind of the fulcrum on which this change is going to come about. And he basically can't help himself. He had to say what he said yesterday on the Senate floor, Tom Cotton. And I just think it's awesome to watch, and especially if you're coming from a higher perspective, okay, higher consciousness. There's really nothing to worry about. There's nothing to get agitated about, although, it happens. You're going to be challenged, right? I'm constantly challenged by things. What I have developed is the ability to stop and go, okay, recognize that feeling or that emotion, that agita, and stop and dismiss it, dissolve it, send it back to the space and place from which it came, which is nothingness. So bye-bye. See ya later. And if I follow the via negativa, so to speak, dismissing what is not true, then all that is left is what is true. And of course, that's the way it was created. We're just returning home, of course, right? The parable of the prodigal son. We're all the prodigal son, each individually and of course collectively. So I hope you have enjoyed today's show, today's broadcast. Every day, Central Time, 11 a.m. We'll do this. I'll then upload it up on my YouTube channel. Go check out the account, check out my profile for the address of the YouTube channel. Like and follow, and have a great day. Peace and blessings. And I will talk to you soon.